I had been a security officer on Outpost Vex 9 for 3 standard cycles. In that time, I had processed approximately 200 violations of interstellar commerce law. None of those violations had prepared me for today. The smuggler sat in Containment Cell 3, all 6 of his appendages cuffed. Standard procedure. What wasn't standard was the 2-meter-tall apex predator from Karvosh Prime, currently pacing inside the reinforced holding bay adjacent to my office. Its scales were mottled green and black. Its teeth were the length of my hand. And it was, according to every xenobiology database in the sector, completely untamable. My throat patch pulsed yellow. My mandibles clicked softly. Officer Kix'thar? The communication panel beeped. This is docking control. The wildlife specialist from Earth has arrived. Send them to security, I said, watching the predator slam against the transparent barrier. The entire wall shuddered. My antennae drooped slightly. 15 minutes later, a human female walked into my office carrying a duffel bag and eating something wrapped in foil. She was shorter than most humans I'd encountered, with dark hair cropped close to her skull and the kind of expression that suggested she found the universe mildly amusing. Blaire, she said, extending one hand. Wildlife relocation specialist? I touched my hand to hers briefly. Human greeting protocols still confused me. Officer Kix'thar, thank you for responding so quickly. No problem. She peered past me at the holding bay. The predator chose that moment to release a roar that made the floor vibrate. Blaire took another bite of her food. Karvosh Render, right? Nice specimen. It is extremely dangerous, I said. My throat patch flickered between yellow and red. The smuggler was transporting it illegally for rich idiots who think they can keep murder lizards as pets. Yeah, I've seen it before. She dropped her duffel on my desk, which sent 3 data pads clattering to the floor. So
what's the plan?
Sedate it and ship it back to Karvosh? That was the intention, yes. However, the creature has proven resistant to standard sedatives. We've attempted 4 different compounds. I gestured with both arms at the holding bay. It becomes more agitated with each attempt. Blaire walked up to the transparent barrier. The render tracked her movement, its yellow eyes fixing on her face. Its jaw opened slightly, revealing those impressive teeth. She grinned. Hey there, buddy. My mandibles clicked rapidly. I would advise maintaining distance. The barrier is rated for... How many eyes does it have? Blaire asked, still staring at the creature. 2. Why is that... Perfect. She turned to me. Her own eyes were brown, I noticed. Humans only had 2 eyes as well, positioned frontally like most predatory species. I'm going to need you to open the containment cell. My throat patch flashed red. Both my antennae went completely flat against my head. Absolutely not. Look, Kix. She pronounced my name wrong, but I was too alarmed to correct her. Your sedatives aren't working because this thing's adrenaline is through the roof. You've got it scared and angry. That's a bad combination. It is scared? I looked at the render, which was currently trying to bite through solid durasteel. It appears to be the aggressor in this situation. Yeah, because you've got it trapped. Blaire pulled what looked like protective gloves from her duffel. Cornered predators are the most dangerous, but there's another way. Which is? Establish dominance. Show it I'm the bigger threat. She flexed her hands inside the gloves. They looked completely inadequate. Then it'll calm down enough to transport. My tail coiled defensively. How exactly do you plan to show a 2-meter apex predator that you are threatening? You are barely 1.6 meters tall. Eye contact. I stared at her. Both pairs of my eyes blinked in sequence. I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Could you repeat that? Eye contact. She said it like it was obvious, like it was the most reasonable thing in the galaxy. I look it in the eyes, don't back down, assert dominance. Works every time. That is, I said carefully, the worst plan I have ever heard. Your instructor never teach you about predator dynamics? My instructor specifically taught us to never make direct eye contact with predatory species. My mandibles clicked so rapidly they were nearly vibrating. It triggers aggression, attack response. It is quite literally the primary thing not to do. Blaire shrugged. Yeah, well, humans do things differently. This was becoming apparent. She walked back to the barrier. The render was still pacing, its claws scraping against the floor with each step. Its tail whipped back and forth. Every muscle in its body looked coiled for violence. So here's the thing about predators, Blaire said, her voice taking on a lecturing tone that somehow made the situation worse. They understand hierarchy, power dynamics, and the fastest way to establish where you are in that hierarchy is through direct visual challenge. By staring at them. Exactly. Until they attack you. They don't attack if you do it right. She turned to look at me with both her forward-facing eyes. Trust me, I've done this hundreds of times. My throat patch was now strobing between red and purple, which I didn't know was possible. On Earth creatures, perhaps. This is a Karvosh Render. They have been classified as untamable. Yeah, you mentioned. She cracked her knuckles. Both hands. The sound made my antennae twitch. That's what they said about Terran tigers, too, and bears, and crocodiles. Turns out everything's tamable if you speak their language. Their language is violence.
Exactly.
She smiled. And I'm fluent. Before I could activate the containment protocols, before I could call Commander Thea Orn, before I could do anything remotely sensible, Blaire pulled a small device from her belt and pointed it at the barrier controls. Wait, I started. The barrier disappeared. The render's head swiveled toward the open space. Toward Blaire, who was standing completely still, hands at her sides, that insufferable smile still on her face. For exactly 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then the creature charged. I dove for the emergency lockdown panel, both arms outstretched, my throat patch blazing red like a distress beacon. But Blaire didn't move. Didn't even flinch. She just stood there and locked eyes with it. The render skidded to a halt less than a meter away, claws scrabbling on the floor. Its massive head was level with hers. Its breath, which I could smell from across the room and deeply wished I couldn't, washed over her face. Blaire didn't blink. Neither did the render. My mandibles had stopped clicking. I realized I was holding my breath, which was physiologically unnecessary for my species, but apparently something my body decided to do. Anyway. Good boy, Blaire said softly. Her eyes never left the creature's. Yeah, you're a big scary guy, aren't you? But I'm scarier. The render's lip curled back. Every single one of those hand-length teeth was now visible. Blaire took a step forward. My antennae fell completely limp. The render took a step backward. I watched this happen. All 4 of my eyes witnessed it simultaneously, which meant I couldn't later claim I'd hallucinated. A 2-meter apex predator, classified as untamable by every xenobiological authority in 6 sectors, was retreating from a 1.6-meter human who was doing nothing except looking at it. Blaire took another step forward. The render's haunches lowered slightly. Its tail, which had been lashing aggressively, went still. That's right, Blaire said, her voice steady. We're establishing some ground rules here. Rule 1, I'm in charge. Rule 2, you don't eat station personnel. Rule 3. The render lunged. My throat patch went white, which I didn't know was physically possible. But Blaire had apparently anticipated this because she didn't move backward. She moved forward into the lunge and made a sound. I cannot adequately describe the sound. It was somewhere between a roar and a hiss, delivered at a volume that seemed impossible from her relatively small frame. The render actually flinched. Then Blaire reached up with both hands and grabbed the creature by its jaw ridges. "No," she said firmly. "Bad." The render went very, very still. "Good boy." Blaire released its jaw and stepped back, but her eyes never left its face. "See? We're communicating." "You're insane," I managed to say. My mandibles weren't clicking anymore. I think they'd forgotten how. "I prefer specialized." Blaire gestured at the render with one hand. It was now sitting on its haunches, watching her with what I could only describe as confusion. "See? Totally calm now. You can transport it whenever you want." I contacted Commander Thaya Orn immediately. 20 minutes later, I stood in the commander's office with Blaire, watching Thaya Orn's throat patch cycle through colors I'd only seen during station-wide emergencies. She was larger than me, her chitin a deeper purple, her antennae constantly in motion as she processed what I'd just told her. "Let me understand this correctly," Thaya Orn said, all four of her eyes fixed on Blaire. "You entered an unsealed containment cell with a Karvosh Render." "Yep. And you subdued it by making eye contact. And some light physical correction, yeah?" Thaya Orn's mandibles clicked once, sharply. "Kix'thar, you witnessed this?" "Unfortunately, Commander." My tail was still coiled from the stress. She was quite insistent. "I saved you a ton of money on sedatives," Blaire offered. "Plus, the render's ready for transport now. You're welcome." Thaya Orn stood and walked to her viewport, both arms clasped behind her back. She stared out at the planet rotating slowly below us. When she spoke, her voice had the flat quality of someone who'd given up trying to understand the universe. "We have recently received 3 more confiscated specimens," she said, "all predatory, all classified as dangerous. Would your technique work on them as well?" Blaire's face lit up. "Probably. What have you got?" The creature holding Bay had been expanded to accommodate the recent influx of illegal wildlife. Bay 2 contained a thoraxian spine wolf, 4 legs, crystalline fur that could extend into razor-sharp quills, and a temperament described in the xenobiology database as extremely hostile. Blaire looked at it through the barrier. The spine wolf looked back, its 3 eyes glowing pale blue. "Don't even think about it," I said. She was already pulling on her gloves. "Blaire, the barrier stays active." "Kix, buddy." She turned to me. "How else am I supposed to establish dominance?" "Perhaps you could simply not establish dominance. Perhaps the creature could remain hostile and we could sedate it normally like rational beings. Where's the fun in that?" The barrier dropped. This time I was ready with the emergency protocols, both arms hovering over the lockdown panel. But I didn't activate it. Not yet. Because I needed to see if this would actually work again, or if the render had been a statistical anomaly. The spine wolf advanced slowly, its crystalline fur beginning to extend. Those quills could puncture standard body armor. Blaire was wearing a canvas jacket. She dropped into a crouch, making herself smaller. The spine wolf paused. Then Blaire looked up, directly into all 3 of its eyes, and growled. It was a different sound than she'd made with the render. Lower, more sustained. The spine wolf's ears flattened. Its quills retracted slightly. "Yeah, you can feel it, can't you?" Blaire said softly. "I'm the scary one here." The spine wolf sat down. Just sat, like someone had asked it politely. My antennae drooped so far they were touching my shoulders. By the time we reached Bay 4, Commander Thaya Orn had joined us on the observation deck. Her throat patch was pulsing a steady orange, the Vrexian equivalent of morbid fascination. "The last specimen is a quantum shade," Thaya Orn said. "It exists partially out of phase with normal space. Our barriers are only 60% effective." "So it could leave whenever it wants?" Blaire asked. "In theory, yes." "Then why hasn't it?" "We don't know. Quantum shades are not well understood." I looked into Bay 4. The creature was difficult to see. It kept flickering in and out of visibility, like static on a bad holographic display. When it was visible, it appeared vaguely feline, with 6 legs and no discernible eyes. "How do you make eye contact with something that doesn't have eyes?" I asked. Blaire grinned. "Improvise." She entered the bay. The quantum shade flickered into full visibility, its body low to the ground. Without eyes, I couldn't tell where it was looking, but its attention was definitely on Blaire. She stood very still. Then she tilted her head to one side. The shade tilted its head to match. Blaire tilted the other direction. So did the shade. "Is she playing with it?" Thaya Orn asked. "I believe so, Commander." Blaire suddenly crouched and slapped the floor with both hands. The shade jumped backward, flickered out of phase, then back in. Then it crouched too. For the next 3 minutes, I watched a human and a partially quantum creature engage in what could only be described as a staring contest without eyes. Blaire would move. The shade would mirror her. She'd make a sound. It would make a similar sound. Finally, Blaire sat down cross-legged on the floor. The shade approached cautiously, then lay down in front of her, its head resting on its front paws. She reached out and scratched behind where I assumed its ears were. "All right," Thaya Orn said, her voice completely flat. "Kix'thar, I'm instituting a new protocol, all dangerous. Specimen handling will now include direct eye contact as the primary subduing technique. Commander, with respect, Blaire is the only being who seems capable of—" "Then she'll train the security team." Thaya Orn turned to leave, then paused. "Also, I'm increasing your medical insurance premium, retroactively." 3 days later, I stood in the medical bay while a technician treated the lacerations on my arms. Apparently, direct eye contact with a Sarkovian blood tick results in it interpreting your stare as a mating display. Blaire visited me during recovery. She brought fruit from the station cafeteria. "How'd training go?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the medical pod. "Poorly." I accepted the fruit with one bandaged hand. "Thayer lost 2 fingers. Quinn is in the psychiatric wing, and we've had to evacuate Bay 7 entirely." "Ah," she nodded sagely. "Yeah, probably should have mentioned, the eye contact thing only works if you actually mean it. You've got to really commit to being the scariest thing in the room." My throat patch flickered red. "You could have explained that before the training session." "Where's the fun in that?" She bit into her fruit. I noticed she was making direct eye contact with me. I looked away first.